Hey guys, Jen here. Welcome to day 4 live stream for our challenge on turning your idea into a story. I'm just going to give everybody a couple of minutes to join me, and then I'm going to share this over to my Facebook group, and then we will get started. Hey Cynthia, how are you? All right, if anyone has questions about concept premise, plot, not premise, plot premise, same thing, in case you aren't aware of that. If anyone has questions or if you want to share yours to get feedback, please put them in the comments now because I'm happy to do that. I'm going to get started in a second. I just want to give everybody a couple of seconds to join us, so hold tight. Hey Deborah, how are you? How's everybody doing with this challenge? Have you been able to spend some time brainstorming and coming up with ideas? I would just love to see an update of how everyone's doing if you want to share. All right. Hey Sheila. How's it going, guys? Awesome. All right, I'm going to get started because I need to go and find a gas station that has some gas because everybody in Austin is panicking about a potential gas shortage, which is only happening because everybody's rushing to the pumps. And so now I need to actually go get gas because I actually do need it for something, and we don't have any right now. So I'm going to keep this short because I just found a list of places that have gas right now. I copy and pasted from my emails and intend to take the challenge this weekend. Awesome. Great. Yeah, and you can always go back to the emails anytime you want to. So that's why I send them out as emails so you can save them, put them in your archive on your email box, or, tag them somehow so that you can find them again. And you could pretty much go through the same challenge, and especially, keep using the videos as well if you want to, just going through the challenge over and over again. And this is a process that you can use to, develop your idea into a plot and a concept anytime you have one. Now, one thing I wanted to mention, because I think I forgot to mention this before, is that we're doing this process in a 5-day period, but I don't actually recommend that you do that all the time. So this is because it's a challenge. I didn't want to make the challenge, 3 weeks or something, because it's not going to be good for keeping up with it. I think that's just too long for a challenge. But what I would say is the process that I'm showing you is really something that I would give more time to. So like, for example, yesterday we talked about asking questions and digging deeper into what could potentially be happening in your story. Well, in that case, I highly recommend that you spend more time on that. But for this challenge purposes, we only had a day because now we're going to jump to the next step. But I would definitely recommend, if you do go through this again or follow this process again, that you actually take more time on these, final steps, the 3, 4, and 5, and just really give yourself the chance to, just think about different ideas and marinate and ask questions and play with different options. And do it over maybe like a week or a 2-week period. So just give yourself some extra time for this, because I think it makes a big difference to have that marination time. 1 day is probably not enough, but I think just for the purposes of this challenge, just to sort of show you what to do, it's a good starting point. And then from here, you can always decide, okay, I'm going to go back now to step number 3, and I'm going to ask more questions, and I'm going to dig deeper, etc. But today we're actually moving to the next step in the process, which is refining what you came up with yesterday. So the whole idea with asking questions and playing with different options is that you can actually find what would be a better version of your story. So when you first get an idea, it's a great idea maybe, but it's maybe not as developed as it could be. Or maybe it's an okay idea, but it could be better if you just took some time to really just marinate on it or play with options. So once you've done all of that and taken the time to do that, then the next step is refining. So what that means is that you're basically taking all the stuff you came up with now, and you're going to look at it objectively and say, okay, out of all of the stuff that I came up with, all the different ideas and options for this story, do I have something that's going to be in my actual story? Is there something that I look at it and go, yes, that's my story, or yes, that's going to be the plot, and just sort of looking at all the pieces. So after you do your brainstorming, that's your next step, is really looking through everything and then saying, okay, I want to use this or I don't want to use this, but you're really just refining down to what are your actual pieces that you're going to now use for your story. So that's, like I said, it's not something I would recommend doing in a 1-day period, but because this is only a 5-day challenge, that's sort of how we're having to do it. But I definitely recommend going back to step 3 and just spending more time on it if you can. Even for like 20 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day for like 3 or 4 days, just giving yourself some time to really think about your story and play with the options, because it will make a better version. So today you're just refining. So now you're going to look at everything and you're going to decide what you're going to use or not use. And it's sort of, you kind of just have to go with what feels like, yes, this feels like the story to me. So maybe you came up with a whole bunch of ideas that you're excited about. Maybe you came up with a bunch that you're like, I don't think I want to use that. So don't force yourself into, I have to use these because I came up with the idea. Just allow yourself to sort of play with the options, and then from there pick different things and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Now, once you've done that, you can really look at what you have and you can say, okay, are there any other things I need to do? And we're going to talk more about finalizing tomorrow, but just to sort of get you thinking about this is, once you've got all your pieces and you've sort of looked at everything, you can start to say, okay, I'm going to use this, I'm not going to use that. Now, the other thing is, during the refining phase, I think it's very important, but not, I wouldn't say necessary, because you don't have to do it, but I think it's important, if you can, to get some outside perspective on some of the story or some of the plot, just to get an idea of, is there another option that maybe you're not thinking of? Because the one thing you have to keep in mind is that you are very close to your idea and to your story. So you may not see it as objectively as someone else would. And so what happens is that you are so close to it that you aren't willing to, see outside a certain perspective. So I always like to go to my mentor or, an editor that I know, or just a Facebook group that I run, and just ask for some, can you guys look at this and tell me what you think? This helped me so much with Soundcheck, and this is the reason I recommend it, is because with Soundcheck, I was working on all the pieces, figuring everything out, but there was a part of it that just wasn't working right. And I just was struggling with it because I kept feeling like, okay, there's something I'm missing or something I'm not thinking of that could connect everything and make it work better. And so I took it to my mentor and I said, could you just look at this? I wrote out my little plot and my concept, and I said, could you look at this and just tell me what you think, or if you have any other ideas? And so he looked at it for me, and my mentor is Larry Brooks, for anyone who's wondering. And he looked at it for me, and then he said, well, I think the thing that will connect all of this is if you make these two characters having a secret office romance. So before that, it was just the character is going to oppose her getting this dream job. He's like her boss, or he's going to be her boss, basically, if she takes the job. And so what happened was, I just kept thinking, okay, but there's something missing. Like, there's still a disconnect, because it's like, why would he care that much? Why would he make such a big deal about her not getting this job? Like, why would he want to stop her? Like, what was the reason for it? And I didn't really have it. And that was my problem, was that I couldn't connect that piece. And so when I showed it to my mentor, he immediately looked at it and said, you need to have a secret office romance going on. And that way, if she breaks things off with him, it makes more sense that he would now be upset about something or have a reason to be pissed off and want to get, revenge on her. So there was that missing motivation, which I wasn't seeing because I was so close to my story. And so by giving, outside perspective and getting some outside perspective, it helped me to finally tie in that final piece, which then helped me to just take off. So I basically took that idea and was like, boom, that fixed everything. And it helped me to bring the story to life in a way that I probably could not have done without that piece. So I think the refining period is really good to not just look at all the pieces you came up with, but then get some outside perspective on, do you think this works? Is this enough motivation? Do you think this is a believable thing? Because again, you're so close to your story, it's just hard to know whether or not that's going to work. So the outside perspective thing is always a good thing for that. And now I said you don't have to do it, so it's fine if you decide you don't want to, but I definitely recommend it, because you're just so close to your own story that it's very hard to see it for what it really is. And you may think you've got this great story and all this, perfect, believable motivation, but then you ask somebody else and they're like, well, that doesn't seem believable to me, or like, I don't think that motivation makes sense. And they may have a suggestion, even a tiny little tweak, like what my mentor said, that made all the difference for me. So I didn't think secret office romance. I was just thinking, she was dating this guy, she breaks up with him, and then all of a sudden, he decides to get revenge on her. But there was that missing piece, which when Larry had said to me, bring in a secret office romance. So that way it's a secret, and then when, they split up, it becomes more of a reason for him to have this motivation now to stop her from getting this job. So anyway, I hope that gives you an idea of why it's important to sort of spend time refining things and not just run with the first ideas you get or the first few little pieces that pop in for you. And then, of course, if you can, get outside perspective as much as possible. And now, I'm not saying you have to listen to everything that you hear. So sometimes we get outside perspective and, we just get too much, or we get things where like, that doesn't really feel right to me. So in this case, it's ask for the feedback or ask for the outside perspective, but then trust your gut on whether or not it feels like the right thing. So when Larry had said that to me, it just, boom, it felt like, yes, that's how to fix this. That's the thing I wasn't seeing yet. That was the thing that I wasn't thinking of because I was too close to the story. Now, I've had other times where people have said stuff to me where I'm like, I don't really like that, or I don't think that works very well, or whatever. And in that case, you just don't use it. So there is you sort of have to be discerning about your outside perspective and realize that, like, yeah, they're going to give you an opinion and they're going to give you some advice, but you don't have to take all of it. You just take the pieces that feel right to you and that feel like they're going to work for your own story. So that is really the refining period, is spending time looking at the pieces, getting some outside feedback if possible, and really bringing your story to life. Now, if you want outside feedback, you are more than welcome to go to my Facebook group, the 1% Writers Club. It's a free group. Lots of helpful people in there, as well as me. You can connect with me in there. So please, if you want feedback or anything, you can post in there at any time, during this challenge or anytime after. Feel free. That's what the group is for. And so you can really get some perspective and some ideas to help you bring your story to a more refined place. Okay, let me see. I got some questions. How are you going to deal with the hero's arc in this challenge? I'm not going to talk about character arc in this challenge because it's a lot more stuff to bring in. But if you look at the stuff we did on day 2, that's similar to character arc. So we're looking at, what's his goal and all of that. But what you need is the inner demon. So I wasn't going to get into that whole thing because it's just not really part of this step in the challenge. So the first steps we're talking about are your concept and your plot. Once you've got that, then you can start bringing in the other things. And of course, if you are joining my workshop that's coming up in September, or it already is September 11th, we'll obviously be doing character arc in there as well. So, but yeah, so I'm not going to talk about it here really. If you want to see stuff about that, you can go to my YouTube channel. I've got a whole video on character arc and how it works. You can go to youtube.com/Jennifer Blanchard, and there's a video on it there. Actually, several videos on it. But the whole thing with character arc is that you have an inner demon and this character is going to overcome it by the end of the story. The antagonist being in the story brings out the inner demon more and forces them to have to now deal with it. And that's their arc in the story, is that they overcome it through dealing with the antagonist and becoming a stronger person. So they start out ordinary and by the end they're the hero. So that's really what a story is at its core, is turning an ordinary person into a hero. Now, they may not be a hero in the big sense of like, they save the world or something. It might just be something really small, like they helped somebody do something, or they overcame something that was stopping them from getting their goal and whatever. So it's heroic in the sense that it saved the day in the story. Not necessarily that it's like they're a hero, they save someone's life, they save the world, which maybe it is. It depends on your story, of course. But just keep that in mind, that that's really what a story is we're seeing this ordinary character turn into somebody better, somebody stronger, and somebody more heroic than who they were at the beginning. So if anyone has questions right now on just how to refine your concept and your plot, or if you want to put your concept or plot in the comments to just get some feedback, feel free to do that. I'll give you a couple of seconds if you want to do that. And then I'm going to wrap this up and go try to find some gasoline. My husband has a show tonight all the way out in Round Rock, which is about a 30-minute drive. So we're like, yeah, we probably should get some gas if we can find some because, obviously it's a long drive and you don't want to get caught with no gas. Deborah, I love your explanation of each aspect. You've got a way of summing up that really clicks. Oh, awesome. I appreciate that. I think for me, I learned the Larry Brooks stuff and then it so deeply resonated with me that I not only decided that I had to teach it to other people, but I think one of my gifts in life is that I'm good at explaining things. And so that's just one of the reasons why I teach, I think, is because I love to explain things. And I think sometimes you have to hear things in multiple ways before it really sticks in your mind. So like all of the years before I found Larry, I had read books, I had taken workshops and classes, and there always just felt like there was a gap there somewhere. It was just like, I don't know, something was missing. And then when I found him and I learned about story structure, it just clicked for me. And I think maybe I had learned about story structure previously, but it just never made sense because whoever was explaining it wasn't doing it in a way that actually resonated or that made it stick in my mind. Whereas when I saw the Larry version, I could see his version playing out in a movie, in a book. Like I saw it in my mind when I was reading his version of it. And so I automatically thought, wow, like this is exactly what I needed. It's the gap filler that I've been missing for so many years. And so then in that moment, not just realizing what I needed to learn more, but I realized no one was talking about it in the way that he was. And so I felt like sort of just this calling to like show other writers what he was doing, and in my own way. So really talking about it in a way where I break it down into small pieces. Because I think the other thing that helps is not thinking of a story as this huge, overwhelming thing, because that's what it ends up being. I think most writers are very intimidated by writing a novel because they're like, oh my God, it's 60,000 words, and how am I going to come up with all those words, and what about the story, and how do I keep everything together? But it's like, if you just break it down into these little tiny chunks of, okay, first you're going to deal with your concept, and then you're going to deal with your plot, and then you're going to deal with refining all that stuff. And you just move through the process a little at a time. Not only makes it easier, but then you actually can sort of get things better. And I think also once you are done, you can sort of go back and repeat the same process. And it just makes it easier. And I think every time you sort of learn something new, or you sort of go a little bit deeper on each of the aspects of it. So if you do like that style, then you'll definitely want to check out my workshop that's starting on September 11th, Write Your Damn Novel Nano Edition. Because that's exactly what we do in there, is we break it down into little chunks over an 8-week period where we're actually working on your concept, your premise, your character arc, your scenes, your structure, and all the pieces that you need to bring your idea to life on the page. And then, of course, you get additional support during Nano, because this is the Nano edition of the workshop. So it's an extra bonus that you don't normally get if you take it in January, which is the other time that I run it. So yeah, I think for me, the bite-sized pieces is what makes it feel less intimidating and less overwhelming. And that's why I started doing my process like that. So this process that I teach and that I talk about here is something that I created based on what I learned from Larry, and then implementing on my own stories, is realizing that if you work in little chunks, not only can you make it easier on yourself, but then you don't have to have hours and hours of time every day to work on it. It literally could just be a 10-minute period where you take out your notebook, write some notes, and then you're done for the day, and that's it. You're not having to spend hours of time, because that's the other thing for me, is I'm very busy. So as a multi-passionate person, I've got lots of things going on at all times, and so I don't always have time to spend an hour, 2 hours working on my story. So if I can just take 10 or 15 minutes a day to look at my story plan and spend a little time asking questions or playing with the story structure, and then just let it go for the day, then I'm not feeling overwhelmed, but I'm still making progress. And so that for me has always been the most helpful thing. Let's see, Sheila, I asked because I tend to develop an interesting plot, but the hero doesn't tend to overcome inner demons in doing it. Okay, yeah, so I would say in that case, what you want to think about is, what inner demon could your character have that would be brought out more by your antagonist? So you're coming up with the antagonist to come up with your plot, right? So you're creating the antagonist and what they want in the story, and then of course what the character, your protagonist, wants as well. So in this case, it would literally just be, what inner demon could I give this person that would cause them to not only, now the antagonist is going to bring it out more, but then also cause them to have to deal with it. So, for example, in Soundcheck, my character, my protagonist, Mandy, her inner demon is that she is a control freak. So she feels like she has to control everything. She can't ask for help because she doesn't believe anyone can do it as good as she can, and she's just a total control freak. So that's her inner demon. And of course, in the beginning of the story, it's getting in her way, but she can't tell yet until later, when it really starts to become a problem for her. And so the antagonist coming in and basically giving her this ultimatum and saying, you have to complete this project and do it well, or you're going to get fired, like that took away all her control. So automatically that brought out her inner demon of being a control freak, because now she has no control over this project that she has to do in order to get her dream job. So it became this huge challenge for her. And then of course at the end of the story, or like midway through the story, that inner demon starts hitting her even harder as she realizes that now she's got this huge project and she can't handle it all, but she refuses to let other people help her because she doesn't think they can do it like she can. And so she ends up not asking for help and not getting help. And so what happens is that because of that, she lets important things slip through the cracks accidentally, and that important thing that slips through the cracks actually ruins the entire project. And so she ends up getting fired. And now she has to try to figure out, what is she going to do to clean up this mess that she's made? And then, of course, it's, well, I have to ask for help. I can't keep doing all this stuff by myself because I can't handle it. So that was really the inner demon that I think played out. And then, of course, by the end of the story, she had asked for help. She'd gotten the help she needed, and she somehow still managed to fix the project, even though she didn't have her job anymore, but she ended up fixing the project, and then something else came of it because of that. So, and I won't tell the whole story in case you want to actually read it, but that's sort of the idea here, is what inner demon could your antagonist pull out of your character more? And in that case, that's what I would play with, is just looking at, okay, is it not good enough? Is it being a control freak? Is it being angry, resentful, being a depressed person? Like, it can be anything. So with an inner demon, it's always going to be something that would be considered bad in society standards. So society says it's bad to be a control freak. It's bad to manipulate people. It's bad to, break laws or whatever. So these are the inner demons that you could possibly bring out for the character and then give her that arc in the story. So, and we're going to go a lot deeper in this on in the Write Your Damn Novel workshop. So if you feel like joining that, we'll definitely be working on your character arc in that. Okay, guys, well, I'm going to wrap this up so I can go try to find some gasoline so I can get to my husband's show tonight. And, another one. Hey, Angela, your method of structuring story has made all the difference in how to create a great story. Your book, Find Your Story, has helped me figure out what I have to have for an actual story and then figure out how it works best for my own process. Love it. Oh, awesome. Thanks so much. I'm actually working on, and I haven't finished it yet, but I'm working on an updated version of that book, which is going to be like a million times better than that one, because I actually wrote that one a few years ago when I didn't have as great of an understanding of story as I do now. So I feel like, I did back then, but now it's even better. And that's kind of the cool thing about the storytelling process, is if you're committed to being a student of story and constantly learning and constantly practicing and, reading more books and watching movies and breaking down the structure, which I do all the time. I mean, now one of my hobbies is that I watch movies and break down the structure. And then, of course, I write it up and I give it to my membership site, the Bestselling Author Mastermind. So they actually get copies of all the stories that I deconstruct, which I do those for myself to learn, but then I also give it to them so that they can learn. So it's kind of cool. But what happens is, if you just keep practicing, you'll start to see that your knowledge and your understanding of story becomes better and better. So now I'm in such a great place because I feel like I've done so much work over the years studying and practicing, where now I can teach it, I can explain it, and I can actually implement in my own stories. But I'm not ever just going to stop. So I'm completely 100% committed to being a student of story for the rest of my life, because you'll never actually master it. So no one becomes a master of storytelling because there's always more that you could do. So it's just a learning process, and it's becoming a student of it and just being willing to understand that there's always another layer and there's always something more you could learn in understanding how it works and how to put it all together. So that for me is my commitment to myself as a writer, but then also as someone who teaches story, is that I'm always learning and I'm always finding other ways to up my game on it, working with my editor or getting Larry to help me with stuff so that I'm learning more as I go. And then, of course, teaching it helps you learn stuff too. So that was one of the reasons I started teaching it back in, 2009, 2010, was because I realized that if you want to learn something better, the best way to do it is to teach it, because the more you explain things over and over again and the more you start to clarify things for other people, it helps to do it for yourself. And so for me, that's always been my way of learning more, is to just find, what do I know really well about something, and then teach it. And then the more I teach it, the more I start to learn it and just sort of integrate it into my being. So it becomes, I'm just a natural storyteller now because I was able to do all that. I don't believe that storytellers are born. Now, I think maybe you're born as a writer. I believe that for sure, that you're born and you just know, I'm a writer, this is who I am. But I think storytelling is a learned skill. So it's something that we pick up as we read books and as we watch movies and things like that. But then we also can learn more about it and become a better storyteller. So like people like Stephen King they feel like they've been born storytellers, and maybe he is in some ways, but I feel like it really came from him being a young child, reading and writing stories over and over again. It's not like he came out of the womb knowing how to tell stories. So, he probably came out as a writer, because I feel like that's sort of one of those born gifts that you just are born with. I'm a writer, that's who I am. And if you feel that way, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But storytelling is a learned skill, which means you can learn it, and the more you practice, the better you get at it. So yeah, I'm really excited to get that book finished at some point soon, hopefully, and get that one out there as well. Okay, yes, I'm going to wrap this up now. Oh, let me just make sure I read this last comment here, what I needed, because I couldn't focus on what elements would add the basic plot or not. Thanks. Yeah, no problem. You're welcome. Okay, guys, I'm going to go find some gasoline, and I will see you guys tomorrow at noon for the final live stream in the 5-day challenge series. If you are interested in the Write Your Damn Novel Nano Edition workshop, this is the last couple of days to get $100 off the price before it's going to be full price for the next 5 days. And then, of course, we start on the 11th. So you can go to jenniferblanchard.net/nano edition, NANO edition, to get more details about that. If you have any questions, just put them in the comments because I'm happy to come back and answer them for you guys later. And I will see you tomorrow.